Hello everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to be going back into map exploration. And we're going to be looking at a map and some companion work from the National Park Service. The National Park Service is the organization that is part of the U.S. government. They are a part of the Department of the Interior that oversees all of the places that we think of as the national parks, mostly, but also national monuments, national historic parks, and in this case, national seashores, which are all along the ocean, and in this case, national lakeshores. There are 3 national lakeshores. There used to be a 4th one, Indiana Dunes, but that is now a national park as of 2019. The remaining lake shores are Sleeping Bear Dunes, which along with Indiana Dunes is on Lake Michigan. There is the Apostle Islands in Wisconsin on Lake Superior. And finally, there are the Pictured Rocks, also on Lake Superior, and like Sleeping Bear Dunes in the state of Michigan. I'm going to start with our map, a nice glossy map. We can see the majesty of the lake shore. It really is a beautiful place with wonderful scenery, lots of hiking, especially around the woods of the area, as well as along the beaches. And of course, some very dramatic cliffs and some natural arches. Let's give ourselves some more perspective. So, all the land here in green in all of the shades of green that we have here is part of the national park. Most of this land, well, I should say, a good majority of this land is owned by the National Park Service. This includes the areas lightest in green, which are the areas that are closest to the lakeshore. As well as this slightly darker, but still definitely light green, which is designated as a wilderness. The remaining darker green here is land that is owned by the Park Service as well as by other federal services. I believe the Bureau of Land Management owns some of it. But nonetheless, it is public land, not private. And here we have to the north, Lake Superior, the largest of the Great Lakes. And we can see to our west and to our east the towns that bracket the park. We have the main town here of Munising. This is the largest town near the park and the largest town in the county that the park is in, which is Alger County in Michigan. Has around 2,000 people. It's home to the main visitor center, which is for Munising Falls. And it also has a Forest Service office because to the south of the park, and in fact, right here we see it highlighted, the Hiawatha National Forest, which contains a lot of the land in the central portion of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And this all is part of the Upper Peninsula, which borders Lake Superior and Lake Michigan to the southeast. In addition to being south of here, there is also Grand Island, which is just off of the coast of Munising. It's accessible by ferry, and it is also part of the National Forest. And the general areas of the park are the far west end, starting from Munising. We have the far west end, which is Munising Falls and Sand Point, which has an exhibit on the maritime history, the boating history of Lake Superior. We have the most popular portion, which is Miners Castle and Miners Beach. This is the area that contains the greatest viewing accessibility to the Pictured Rocks, which are primarily along this third stretch, which is mostly accessible via Chapel Road and contains Chapel Falls and Chapel Beach and Chapel Rock, which is the namesake for all of them, as well as Mosquito Falls and Mosquito Beach. We then get into the wilderness of Beaver Basin, which is the area surrounding Beaver Lake, which is accessible via the Little Beaver Lake Road. Then continuing along the highway, we have the beginnings of 12 Mile Beach, as well as some lookouts to the Hurricane River and Lake Superior Overlook, which is accessible. This sort of bleeds into the log slide and access to the Osable Lighthouse. And then finally, we reached the Grand Sable area, or Sable area. This is French-influenced vocabulary, with the great Grand Sable Dunes, Sable Falls, and the Sable Visitor Center. Continuing our French influence, we have bookending on the eastern end the village of Grand Marais, which means great marsh, grand for great, marais for marsh in French. Now, at each of these places, there is a lot of hiking to be done. Obviously, less in places that get you significantly closer to the lake shore. But there are opportunities nonetheless to supplement we have this guide of walks and hikes in the lake shore. We start with smaller hikes, and we mostly go from west to east again. So we have access to Sandpoint March, Munising Falls, which is just under I don't want to know what the math is, just over a quarter of a mile there and back, so quite easy. There's the overlook to Miner's Castle at the beginning of the Pictured Rocks. There's the hike to Miner's Beach. There's the White Pine Trail, which is at Little Beaver Lake. It's the Superior Overlook. The Log Slide Overlook. Grand Sable Dunes, and Sable Falls, all of which are under a mile, all of which are fairly easy to do, though depending on where you're starting your journey may be more or less accessible. So let's say that you're starting in Munising. If you want to go to the Grand Sable area, then you're going to have to drive all the way along Highway H58. For more complicated hikes, we have in the Miners Castle area, Miners Falls. We have the Chapel Basin area, the Chapel Falls and Mosquito Falls. From the trailhead, each route to the beach is roughly 3 to 2.5 miles. So, potentially a bit of a challenge, but not too terrible. And obviously going around Grand Portal Point to go across the Pictured Rocks would be quite long. There's obviously the wilderness of Beaver Basin, both internally in the actual wilderness and along the beach. There is the White Birch Trail here at 12 Mile Beach. Well, really, the eastern end, of 12 Mile Beach, because the beach is quite long. We have the hike to Osaba Light Station and the Grand Sable Forest Trail among the dunes. And finally, there is the North Country National Scenic Trail, which is a trail that goes all along the shoreline of Lake Superior, mostly, at the lakeshore, at the National Lakeshore grounds. But it also continues far to the east and far to the west in the Upper Peninsula. I believe to the east it ends near Sault Ste. Marie. And I'm not sure where it goes to the west, but I will include in the description if that is incorrect. Well, if this is incorrect and where this goes. So that concludes the walks and hikes. But we also have waterfalls, some of which we've already talked about. Obviously, Munising Falls is right near waterfalls, and they are quite beautiful. Miners Falls, much the same, but a much longer way to reach them. We have Mosquito Falls and Chapel Falls, and hidden from view. We have Sable Falls on the far east. And we also have two falls that aren't easily hikeable to. There's Spray Falls to the east of Chapel Rock. And there is Bridal Veil Falls. Neither of these are accessible or viewable from the trails, though they are viewable if you are riding on a boat. You can charter or buy a ticket to go on a cruise boat that goes along a lake shore. Most of the ones that come from Munising will likely go as far as Chapel Rock to go and see us all of the Pictured Rocks, the primary Pictured Rocks. Though obviously, if you have your own private boat, you can go quite a bit farther and elsewhere along Lake Superior. And lastly, there are a couple of waterfalls that aren't within the park itself, but are still viewable from within, mostly Munising. Horseshoe Falls and the Memorial and Tannery Falls are within Munising itself. There's Alger Falls just outside of it. Also Wagner Falls, which I believe belongs to the Michigan State Park Service, though I believe it is actually a state park. And there are three other falls. Actually, I take that back. Two other falls that are mentioned. Scott Falls, which is near O'Train to the west of Munising. And Laughing Whitefish Falls, which is also far to the west. That covers most of the main reasons that people come to Pictured Rocks. You can see at the bottom of the map here, as we're hiding the top portion of the park, we have details to go over all of the other amenities, the limited amenities, but options for ways to interact with the park. We've mentioned some like going to the visitor centers, going on boat tours, hiking, beaches. There are also winter activities like skiing or snowmobiling. They also allow hunting and fishing and types of camping. And that, I believe, covers everything that I wanted to talk about. To cover this beautiful landscape, this beautiful part of the National Park Service. I hope to find more of these types of maps, especially ones for national parks and nationally owned areas in the future. As I close the map and bring it together, I want to thank you for going on this exploration of Pictured Rocks with me. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.